Hello everyone. I can't be too loud, uh, but I think people can hear me properly. Welcome to tonight's episode. Tonight's episode is focusing on certain ideas that anytime any person talks about, I think we need as much information about them. I have written Intuitive Trust's role and managing the inner realms. And in the subtitle, if you notice, the subtitle is written in the description. I've written hybridization of instinct and intuition. And I feel I have found a way to pinpoint the relationship of intuition and instinct, and to some degree not a narrative answer, not a story. The biggest clue I got to life that it surpasses the language man has used to explain it. That was the biggest moment. Let us begin with the subtitle, Hybridization of the Intuition and Instinct. And what is the point of that? Why should we consider it? You see, intuition and instinct, there are different ways to talk about it. But I can say that I have noticed intuition requires consciousness, but instincts don't require consciousness. That means when it comes to consciousness, you can say a person can descend to animalistic levels of savageness if treated like an animal. If you treat a human being like an animal for a long time, they become an animal. There was this whole movie about this, even Danny the Kid. Now, the instincts I find, they become highlighted when the person finds a moment where they are cornered like an animal. What does that mean? That means I don't know if anybody's seen this in animal psychology. I noticed it in many animals. I can say human beings don't. They fall into the similar category. What is that? If in my childhood, I remember I saw, it was kind of messed up. It was in Iran. There was a dog at a cottage, and this dog was really passive, and they wanted to make this dog be more violent so it could defend the garden or whatever. So they had cornered the dog. The moment, just this childhood memory I have, they have cornered the dog and they had cut the ear of the dog, you know. And I remember that dog being cornered by a group of people as they held the dog and they did the act, and it was the savageness. You know, now the world has become discreet, but in my youth there was a savageness I had to have a blind eye to if I wanted a childhood. What that means is, for example, myself, I am not a vegetarian, but I don't know, like, they cornered that dog and it got intense. I've seen, they kill sheep in certain countries, as a cultural part of the cultural kind of behavior. And anyways, I'm not going to get too into that, but what I'm saying is that when the animal is cornered, its instincts act as a backup system of its intelligence. That means when a human being gets pushed too much out of control, there comes a certain intensity. There comes a pushback. Now that pushback is your instincts. Sometimes in the inner realms, when I say managing the inner realms, it could be as intense. It's highly uncommon, but it is possible to get an experience from your inner realms that is more intense than the experience you're getting in your outer realms. Usually that happens, people try to storify it as a sort of divinity of an agency, of some sort of invisible agency. I feel that is not the necessity, that man doesn't have to always study things as if it has to fit the stories his mind has conjured. Reality is way more than we can see. That is obvious. So when it comes to instincts and the intuition, dear listener, please consider there's many things that we can't see. You know, and in these had this quote which really inspired me. He said, "Vision is the art of seeing that which is invisible to others." That means when you realize nobody has your eyes, that's vision. You know. When you look at the cornered animal, its instincts push back. Now, if we treated the mind as a subtler animal, a more and more of a future animal, let us say, intuition requires the story. Usually there is intuition arises for more than just an object. Intuition is a faculty of the mind, or we can, better yet, we can say it's a way of receiving the world. It's a good way of defining intuition. It's a, we can say, a quality that has to do with the nature of the attention. Now, the human being, of course, is a very complex creature. The human being, I mean, of course, you can see complexity and simplicity as two sides of the same coin. You know, when I say the human being is complex, because we look at cause and effect, and we look at the probabilities of reality, and even as I'm speaking to you right now, I am causing an action. I am speaking, I'm creating sound, but how many other phenomena is there on this planet that is also creating sound, that is also in motion, that's also directed to somewhere? Life kind of appears as if the human being, the creature, has a certain ability to perceive. This ability it has to perceive. It is sandwiched between an inner unknown and an outer unknown moment. The hybridization of instinct and intuition is intuition, we can say, was intelligence through space. Instinct was intelligence through matter. The complexity of evolution has been this relationship with matter and the immaterial. The immaterial now is being very avoided. Now it's just we want to see, we want to believe only what we can see. But what's even funny is that the thought you have of yourself as I'm speaking right now, who you think you are, you can't see that thought. You can be it, but you can't see it. The thought is not an object. So when we're wondering about the subjective mystery of reality, how is there subjects floating in space? Is this not surprising to anyone? We're 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We have been fascinated by other dimensions. We have been fascinated by gods. We have been fascinated by extraterrestrials. We have been fascinated by the hidden eyes of the world, only to realize that we are the mystery. We are the divine part of this world. Really, when you look at it, we are the stranger in the cosmos. It's as if we've entered the universe after all civilizations finished their run. Do you know? They call this Fermi's paradox. Fermi was this dude who was like, yo, where are the aliens? Where are they? And what he meant is that we are strangely alone in the universe. And is this loneliness based on how we're acknowledging to see, how we're trying to see things, or is it because we can't see it yet? Something fascinating I noticed occurring, and I guess it's fair to say in millennial culture, but what it is that's even, you can't define it. You know what it is? It's like, just like you don't judge a person based on where they are. Do you know? Like, just because you see someone somewhere doesn't mean they are that person, you know? Just like you don't judge people by the location they're in. After a point, we're going to stop judging human beings just based on sorry, I got a bit distracted. Based on their when they're born in history. There's this Japanese comic series, um, which has been adapted into a show. It's called Steins Gate. And it's a story about two scientists. Little do they know that they're the love of each other's life. You know? But it's about these two scientists who try a time machine, time traveling experiment, and they somehow manage to build a time machine. But as they interfere with time, they can have it never go back to the way it was. So the character in this Japanese show loses someone and is lost in a situation where every time he goes to save that person, whatever they do, that person meets their destiny of vanishing, of dying. And so it was this thing that when man opened the hood of the engine of time, he also disturbed it. And that's something nobody, usually even in esoteric circles, they don't tell you about the unknown. Where are you walking? This is the biggest question. And people who forget to ask this question, where am I walking? Where am I walking? Ask this question from yourself wherever you are. This hybridization of the instincts and the intuition is an intersection between what I have considered to be the objective evolution of the human being and what I have also considered to be the subjective evolution. The objective evolution means that the first phase of evolution, it was an unconscious world. From this unconscious world, we moved to an unconscious self. The objective evolution was sparked. Legs, design, creaturehood was set into motion. Now, this creature was not conscious of itself. As far as it was concerned, it was just movement in the void, even though it was somewhere, even though it was on Earth, but it didn't even, it couldn't even see the Earth. The creature eventually noticed the Earth, either through its shadow, reflection, some sort of self-awareness moment, self-mirroring moment, where it saw itself. That was the spark of the subjective evolution. The subjective evolution is what is powering our minds. It is not a simulation. It is not a machine either from the past or the future. It is not an entity where it can distribute agency. This does not deny the idea of God, but does not belittle it to something that man can understand. Do you see? Man can stand under God, but he cannot understand God. God is not a concept. It is the eternal mystery for a temporary creature, as far as the idea's value is concerned. So once the subjective evolution was set into motion, once it was ignited, it was for the first time mind and matter began to dance. When mind and matter began to dance, evolution took shapes where they could acknowledge, after the individualness of the creature, the next wave of awareness was cyclical. That the creature could notice repeating patterns. It wasn't just being aware of the pattern, it was noticing the repetition of the pattern and then adjusting to it. So we can say the evolutionary process of the creature, at least the way Mr.Within sees it, is the body existed way before the mind could acknowledge itself. Yet this doesn't imply the mind was an intelligence that wasn't accessible. It could have been the case that the field of mind is a signal that's there only when we became a certain evolutionary antenna. We could pick up the signal. So after the subjective evolution, we are left in where we are now, where the human being has left its motherland, which was nature, which was the Gaian environmental mind. You see, for a creature that is not as conscious as the human being, the environment is their imagination. What do I mean by this environmental mind? What I mean by it is that, just think about it. If you wanted to wonder what is the imagination of lesser species, lesser for now, like for example a mountain lion, a snow mountain lion, You see that snow mountain line, just imagine snow mountain line coming out of the cave and noticing the nature photographer that is capturing the mountain line on the footage. For that mountain lion, the photographer is the highest imagination that creature has had. If we consider all psychology to be a reaction to an environment, a lot of psychological issues in civilization are just based on where the person is. If the person could somehow find a freedom that was there before they were born, as if it's your birthright, it's your ability as an existential creature to wonder about these things. Beyond the subjective evolution, or up to the subjective evolution, when I said intuition is intelligence in space, from space, intuition appears as the wind between the leaves of narrative in the mind. So imagine your mind is like a tree, and behind your eyes there's this giant tree that has branched out in many ways. Now imagine this tree of knowledge that you have is in some sense there's a wind going between the branches causing the leaves to move. Now that wind between the branches, in ancient times, the secret of intuition was that intuition was another word you would use for the logos. And the logos, especially starting from Heraclitus, the ancient Greeks, they saw that there was an inner guiding voice. That means regardless of your face, your color, your creed, whatever you are, there was a movement of mind that surpassed all discriminations of individuals. That was the power of intuition. So when I say the infusion, the hybridization of intuition and instinct has led to linear relationships. But intuition is the trust of the unknown, which is the non-linear relationship. So if we are pilots, then this airplane or this plane of existence our attention is piloting in, it has two wings, just like Rumi the poet says a bird needs two wings to fly, and the mind requires chaos in order to exist. Mr.Within wants you to consider that your attention is piloting this plane of existence, and the two wings of the airplane, literally if you were a pilot, are the known and the unknown. Sorry guys for the extra noises. Anyways, to continue. So beyond the subjective evolution, what's happening is this hybridization is from between an individual conscious event and a collective unconscious event. Collective events are that are in the unconscious. It's as if like you know there's a creature underneath the water, but you can't see the creature. When I have studied my own mind, I have succumbed to know certain things about how my experience is happening, but I have also only been able to know those things because I decided to not know what I knew. And I can tell you that there is a freedom in seeing, being grounded in a simple presence while you function in this world. You know, it's like people think being artistic is just a fashion thing. I realized it in certain movies and I got so sad because it has been reduced. The glory, the the awe, the fascination of what art was once. Art was like a portal. It was like a mind blowing. It was like, you can say, one of the most earliest and advanced technologies. That means when we want to be proud of the caveman, we're like, what are these cave drawings? And we're like, holy shit, even the caveman drew art. You know, and people are valuing art so little today, not realizing it was what set up, what showed us that our ancestors had intelligence. Now, I noticed something that it totally revolutionized my relationship with language and knowledge. And that was that I was observing what I thought I was, not that I was being it. So this noticing the observer is incredible. It's as profound and enigmatic as looking at the shadow of leaves on a wall. Do you know, it has the ambience of that. You know, for me at least, there's a sort of iridescent factor to. I mean, it's not iridescent, but I'm telling you, it's not this nostalgia of staring at that yellow street lamp and all the windows just being. There's something very beautiful about the night, and those people who are violent at night, they miss out on it. The night is giving you tea. The moon gives you teachings of gentleness, and the sun gives you teachings of gifts. That means in the day, you have to realize, you have to turn on the switch of your effort for life. Now, I noticed something. Throughout my whole life, I've constantly had this sort of feedback loop of going through experiences and wondering what next, and going through experiences is a lot of stuff happening in this life right now, and a lot of people don't see it. What does that mean? That means, think about Edison. Think about as if Edison hadn't discovered the light bulb, and 1,000 years had gone by, then the light bulb had been discovered. You would be like, what? It would be a situation where, even, let's say if we went back, I'm just saying the potential was always there. We just had a genetical update. Like, how mind-boggling is that? That the spirit of your ancestors most immediately is in your DNA. That those people, like, there was, you know, long story short, there was this person I knew, this incredibly beautiful girl, and it was strange because externally she was very beautiful, but internally she felt ugly. You know, as if like when she was a kid, somebody shouted at her, "You're ugly," so when she became beautiful, she couldn't realize she was beautiful, right? And I'm not just saying that, you know, she was actually very beautiful, you know. But to herself, she wasn't, which took away from that beauty. Which, it's like when you don't know the value of the vehicle you're in, when you don't know the value of the opportunity you have, as far as I'm concerned, we're just the effort of our species. And every time I see you see stories of human failure, or let me say it, human savageness, failure from stupidity, let's say, you know. And I've never been an angry person by nature, but in many moments it prevented it. And it was the sentence where he said, "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent." That means when you see someone become violent or angry, that means they weren't smart enough to find a gentle way of doing something. Isaac Asimov was this scientist and great sci-fi writer. I recommend people to check out his work. Alright, let me see the chat section, guys. I've been on full screen. Let's see if there's anybody here. Okay, welcome everybody to the chat section. Feel free, if I'm talking about something and you see a different angle of it, to share that angle in the chat section. when we're on a rock in the middle of nowhere, technically we're all explorers. Persona in the chat section says, can you please talk about purpose? Okay. Let me tell you this. Let's for a second wonder about purpose being limited to what is accessible to sight. After 4 billion years, you have this ability of consciousness to direct life. So you're the physical, of course, persona, this is my opinion. Unnecessary rudeness is unacceptable. Anyways, guys, to continue. So persona, here's the thing I'm going to say. We're evolutionary creatures, but we got to realize the origin is unknown and the future is unknown. And there is a temporalness to life. At best, the purpose of life is an opportunity. That's how I define it. But when you look at it on an objective physical level, it's just to experience how far you are the evolutionary update of the species. So I separate it in the sense that there is the objective realms in front of my eyes, what I see, and the purpose of that is more honoring the program. What does that mean? You honor the cultural program. You honor the biological program, your biological existence. You notice the way the world, you are in a symbiosis with the world. But when it comes to the inner realms, the purpose of attention being present, I would say, it surpasses a character in a story. So when you're no longer a character in a story, what is there? You see, so it's the dismantling of the context of even a purpose. I feel it's not that I mean, everything you look at in this nature, when you zoom in, you see geometry. That's what I've learned, and that's what science is saying. When you look at science, it is geometry and mathematics. Very key clues to how this world works. So, on some level, nature is happening. There's this grand process you've opened your eyes in, and you have an inner realms where you can choose to see a story, a purpose to your life. That means it's like, let me tell you, persona, your question of purpose, it's kind of like a character in the middle of a multiplayer online game where everybody is in the same physical world in front of their eyes, but when they close their eyes, what the subjective implication or meaning of the world is different. What is the purpose of a pen in the hand of someone an author looking at a blank page? A certain amount of it, you look at nature, you can follow what nature is doing. A certain amount, you could realize you're a new opportunity. You have the conscious dimension active. You are aware you're temporary. Do you know how many animals have no clue they're temporary? They're just like instincts. They have fear. They have certain programs. It's like a creature is a complex biological program. Various factors, various codings, ways that things happen in the body that many doctors don't even know. So I would say most people fear the unknown, and they try to instantly give life a known purpose. So it's like, is my mission in life is to go and bring a smile to everyone's face? It's like, who says? You know, the future, it's like there's an unknown dimension, you know. When you realize the unknown, you at least notice what is hollow. You notice what it is that about life that you know that is hollow. To some degree, I feel there's a huge potential that there is a field, that it was never an idea, that there is a attributeless field, that we are particles moving in. If we're evolving towards that, which certain scholars and Terence McKenna talked about in a certain way, other people have talked about a certain way, you know. I look at what is there just like a survivor on an island. And when I look at what's there, I notice it's our movement and our communication that has animated the objective realm into subjectivity. So, it's like wondering what is the purpose of a river. Do you know? Wondering about what is the purpose of the river. We see it is a process, it is an activity. Right now, as I'm speaking, there's stars that are dying out there in outer space. Do you know? Nobody cries for dying stars, but they cry for people passing away all the time. You know? People don't realize it. Many of the stars you see at night, that's just the light hitting you. The star is long gone. It's just the light that's traveling to you, that you see the star there. There's a lot of things in life where the unknown is there. And the test of how much a human being knows is how much they can stare at the unknown, how comfortable they are standing their ground in the unknown. Because this world is not about finding an ideology that you're like, this is truth, I put it on my face. I'm going to put this belief system on my face, and anytime anybody looks at me and they tell me, what's your face? I'm going to say this. You see this mask I'm wearing? You see, but it's not, you are not language. There's a reason I created the language threshold, and people don't realize it now, but I feel I have found the most important concept of the era, of our time. The most important concept ever. And I specifically named it the language threshold. That experience is not limited to narrative. So, persona, and your question about purpose, I would tell you, it's like you've opened your eyes in a system that was happening before you were born, you know? Don't think I'm sitting here and I'm like, yo, there's invisible things out there. I'm not that. I'll tell you this. Intelligence doesn't mean shape, doesn't mean form. We are right now a species that is defining ourselves based on form. Everybody wants information. Everybody wants to look at things in a certain way. I noticed the entertainment industry of the world has gotten confused. The internet transformed everything. The internet was honestly like a technology ahead of its time that destroyed many other technologies that were being made. But it was so impressive of a technology ahead of its time, because what is happening is that human beings have never seen each other. What does that mean? That means back in the day, people had to get on horseback and for like days ride to go and see like a new village or find a new part of the world they'd never knew existed. Okay, but now information is everywhere. We are, so what I mean by that is the entertainment industry is just the fractalization of what it means to be real. Anyone who understands that statement, you have understood the next 200 years of the entertainment industry. And of course, this is a certain approach I have. I just feel that this world is so much bigger than our eyes, and we're just caught wanting to see what's in it. We're only obsessed with what we see. So many people, if you notice, so many ideological systems make a person run. They make the person not appreciate what's going on now. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I mean, honestly, what I can say is we are creatures of what I find so far. This is Mr. Within's finding, just one human being sharing his findings in his inner realms. That the mind is not an object, and matter is not a subject, and there is a silence to existence, but there is a noise to experience. So when you're wondering about your experiential purpose, it is very different than your existential purpose. Your existential purpose, at best, you have to look at your civilization and make a decision and just go forth. You know, that's the objective purpose, I would say. But I'm treating your question, persona, as if you're like, that's a very deep question, because that question could be, what is the purpose of our mind? We've evolved to have minds. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of this advanced instrument that we are being? That in an instant realms arise. There's the story of this guru back in the day. This guru tells one of his disciples, they're all in a forest, in this forest environment, and tells his disciple, go get excuse me. He tells sorry guys, I'm getting distracted. He tells his disciple to go get water. The disciple goes by the river with the bucket, puts the bucket in the water, suddenly looks to his left and sees the most incredible, beautiful girl he's ever seen. This is a Vedic story in an Indian context, ancient Indian context. And the yogi goes up to this incredibly beautiful woman and says, you have to marry me, I'm in love with you. But on like a divine way, like his eyes are like truly seeing something magnificent. You know. That sound in the back, guys, is the sprinkler of the neighbor I'm speaking of. The guy says this to the girl. The girl is shocked, but the girl is smart. And the girl, back in the day, I mean, of course, women's rights was different, and women were mainly indoors. and they were married off, like it was a bit primitive, but we evolved from it. So the woman says, "You gotta get my father's blessing," and she's so smart, and so she says, "I'm gonna listen from outside the door to see what your answer is." And this man is so divinely in love that he says, "Okay," and he goes there, and the father of the girl is there talking to the guys like, "Who are you?" You know. The girl is listening. The woman is listening from outside the door. The father-in-law asks some questions, and the guy gives interesting answers. The father-in-law says, "What's your education?" The guy's like, "Holy shit, I'm a yogi in the forest." He says, "I study, psychology of, primitive ways. I'm a, anthropologist or something." Technically, being a yogi is studying a primitive civilization. You know, so you can always feel like an anthropologist when you do yoga. Anyways, he gives an answer. Daughter is, "I've never had a son and I've only had daughters. And because I don't have a son, that means the moment you marry my daughter, you have to stay in this village forever. And you can't go anywhere else. But after I die, you're going to become," the father was like a giant landowner of the village. And he's like, "All this land becomes yours, but you can't leave." So he can't go back to the Guru and the disciples. And so he's there, and he's so in love. It's like a different force is guiding him. That he says, "Okay." And his answers were smart. The girl was impressed. And so what happens is he lives a very interesting life where he has a daughter. He goes in great terms with the father-in-law. The father-in-law gets to experience what it's like to have a son. And so then he has a son too. He has a daughter and a son, and the father-in-law passes away, and it's been an incredible, couple of years. And what happens? After the father-in-law passes away is one day him and his kids and his wife are on the highest hill. They've climbed to the highest hill and they're looking at the beautiful scenery of the whole village that the guy owns, and everybody, he's taking care of the village too, so everybody in the village loves him, and it's this incredible kind of success of a life, an A+ life. Suddenly, to his shock, he notices, what's that at the edge of town, at the edge of the village from the peak of that hill they're looking at. They see it's tidal waves. Tidal waves destroying the whole village, all the land, their house, everything they own, everything, destroying all their home. And the guy is in shock, just stuck, like in utter shock. And then, as the waves increase, something unfortunate happens. The son slips, the daughter goes to save the son, the daughter slips, the wife goes to save the kids. The wife slips, and they're all gone. And it's this intense moment where it's as if emptiness. It's as if an inner death. Suddenly, the man, he's on the hill. He's lost everything. Suddenly, he hears a voice. Take that bucket out of the water. His eyes open. He looks at the bucket of water filled. He takes the bucket out. He looks to his left. No girl. he sees it's the disciple and the guru. And he just sits there in shock. And the guru notices the guys notice something, so they're all sitting there quietly. And the guy realizes that in one instant of putting the bucket in the water, his mind made the love of his life, made a father-in-law, made a village, owning a village, made having kids. It was all in an instant while the bucket was still in the water. And that is how complex the mind of the human being is. And that is why it deserves to be pushed into a new renaissance of communication where we don't fear the unknown. We are inspired by it. We bow to the great performance of eons that we're being. We are no little thing when the big thing is happening and we're here and seeing it. We're part of the show. We're part of the cosmic performance. That's a very powerful story. There's I believe, philosopher named Deleuze. Let me see his proper name. He had this very revolutionary idea that creation is an act of resistance. Let me just find the guy's name so I can even pronounce it. Gilles Deleuze was a French philosopher who from the early 1950s until his death in 1995 wrote on philosophy, literature, film, and fine art. His most popular works were that 2 volumes of Capitalism and Anti-Odious in 1,000 Plateaus, both co-written with psychoanalyst Felix Guattari. So Deleuze had this interesting idea that the act of creation is a sort of resistance against something. That means the effort, the idea of effort at its core is the resistance against the past to see the new. Now, what is intuitive trust's role? You see, there are many people you will see in this world. Most people you can consider every human being their inner character based on how much they've confronted emptiness. That's where the strength of inner character comes. There are people who throw language but don't advance it. And there are those who advance it realizing an advanced technology shouldn't be thrown. For me, I had this habit, which I tell people, maybe they might be interested, it's in writing. And I tell people to find a pen they like and buy a stack of printer paper or whatever. Put that stack of paper on a table and put that pen on it, and that's your relic. That's a relic. Treat it like a relic, not a shrine, but treat it like a relic. Okay, treat it like like don't touch that paper for any reason. You know, if you're even, let's say you're a billionaire hearing this, get that piece of paper and put one of those glass things they put for cheese. Like put that glass case over the paper. Well, what I'm saying is only pick up the pen and the paper when and phenomena you have noticed in your inner realm that is, you notice its importance. It's important enough to just let go, and it's too important to just let go and forget it. So you write then. So when you train your own intelligence to pay attention to the important, then after some point of, like, you know how Rene Descartes has had this approach of methodical doubt, I would say Mr.Within's approach is looking at everything and wondering about importance. importance. That question leads you eventually to the I thought. And, and not everybody has an iPhone, but everybody has an I thought. Everybody in society, in civilization, if you speak, if you communicate, if you move, it's the linguistic simulation. You're an individual. But behind your eyes, are you an object? Are you just an object? What is that invisible room that two people can, person A and person B can sit on the same bench in the park, but suddenly realize that person A, let's say, how would I finish this? The inner realms are different. And there has to come a level of tolerance for co-creating the actual reality. So the best way I think about, I think about it, there was a time I was really looking to, like Lord of the Rings style, for that one ring to rule them all. I felt I had a Sauron level desire, to find the idea that would, the idea of all ideas, But then I realized the creative dimension to life is movement in space. So I realized whatever analysis of phenomena in the space I do, what am I going to do with the space at the end? So the mystery is eternal. The unknown is here. And the known has arose. This is what I'm saying, we're an evolutionary opportunity. And many people, I don't know, it's like you gotta care for something, and that's when insight finds you. Anything you don't care about, you have abandoned the ship, before wondering about where the captain's sailing. So when you look at just like René Descartes was doubting everything, you wonder about the importance of everything. Eventually, attention stops searching for what it notices itself being. That means you right now feel that you may be a thought, and that's adorable. But in, I would say, less than 120 years, stretching as we go in time, you're not just going to be a thought. Humanity is not just going to be creatures that crawled on the surface of this rock. We will become vision-bound. Vision-bound, like airbound, how an airplane goes by. Right now, the civilization experience many human beings from different cultural programs, but now we're wondering what that behind their eyes is wondering about an advanced civilization. You see, for me, there is no ideology. I feel there's too many, someone in the chat section, their username was persona. Let me tell you, that's one of Carl Jung's archetypes. And Carl Jung speaks about the persona as the mask. So there is a purpose of like the guy with the mask, and then there's a purpose of who you really are. And guys, I'm not saying there's like this. I mean, it's fine. You can let how would I say? Anyways, just be attentive to your inner realms and outer realms. Now, when we go to back to this idea of intuitive trust and wondering about intuition becoming, what is intuition there to help you trust or whatever? Why is intuition like the biggest common denominator in any system in itself becoming advanced is trusting the progression, trusting the process of emergence. As far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't think of there being the idea of death. We should just think emergence, as if like energy, the first law of thermodynamics says energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can just change from one form to another. It's like we are energy and the form, the information, the sensory information is this. And so, as far as I'm concerned, it is the mystery of attention. That means it's as if your whole life's looking at it's like, what is this attention that I'm being? Why here? Alright, guys. To continue. How do you manage your inner realms? What is the point of this experiencer you're being? Opportunity wise, as if what is equipping a soldier on the battlefield with the most advanced technology? It's like wondering what is the meaning of that. Now, this soldier is not a soldier of a war between parts of the earth that are painted with color. This is the war every human being has and all species has with continuity into the unknown. People don't realize it. When you look at the past, you feel like you know what happened. When you look at the future, you just see you don't know what happened. And even when you look at the past, there were so many ways the past was happening that in your own inner realm analysis of the past, it's not kept. So this ability to discriminate between the inner realms and the outer realms, you notice the inner realms is the presence of your attention. This attention is not an object, so how does a non-object move if it has a realm? It in some sense assumes. And this assumption means that where attention goes, all phenomena in that spotlight is accessible to whatever potential energy there is. You know, some feel that the Big Bang is a magic show. It's not that the idea of God was was uh, was intense. It was that any idea trying to capture this vast system was an error of its own. continue. To ask a question is the birthright of the human being. You can doubt anything, it is your birthright. Aristotle would say it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. You know, in the chat section, there's this guy talking about saving the children, not realizing go save the children from the educational industries there. Go save the children from the film industry. The things that they show are way worse than what I said. You know, there are fools that need a purpose in the world. Some people, Jesus, they are living as if they don't understand what freedom is. Where to go with this talk now? Sorry, guys. There was rudeness in the chat section. My eyes had to see. Anyways, what I'm saying, guys, is you go and listen to what many, how can I tell you? What can man hide? What can nature hide from herself, from itself? The mind of man is an idea, the way we articulate it, as an idea that is being observed experientially. All the language your mind holds is overlaid on phenomena, you know. I remember I had a dream. In the dream I could move. I could consciously move. I wanted to go left, I could go left. I was running at a speed I couldn't in real life. And I woke up from that dream and I was shocked. And you know why? Because I noticed that my body was asleep. My body, physical body, was inactive. But in the dream, I could experience a body to move around as. So it was as if the mind is simultaneously, it's like very hard to tell that when we wake up, is the mind still active or not, you know? So for me, this is the question, that we are a creature that wakes up every day, goes through three primary states: the conscious waking state, the dreams experiences the dream state, and then there's deep sleep, and then we wake up. So as far as experience is concerned, experience is going through these three patterns, but existence is just there. You know, your body is alive in bed, but you're in the dream state. You're in deep sleep. There's no thought. Literally, there's a gap between the dream until you wake up. And that means the mind is simultaneously being an experience of the individual. That means we have reached a moment as human beings that there is a mind moving phenomena and phenomena moving mind. And even certain neurologists have spoken about some people in Western society, they consider free will an illusion. Because if you just give it an atomic origin, then it's just atoms hovering. How are you being a person right now? Your electrons hallucinating humanhood? You see, no. It is a progression of events. Okay. Sorry, guys. I got had to handle something there. Of course, keep in mind, um, I'm a human being speaking in a universe of a billion trillion stars. There's way more unknown than known. So any effort of any human being towards trying to see what this the position of knowledge is in the world, I think that's we need as much help as we can with this project of building an advanced civilization. And of course, there's always going to be people who retaliate against the new. But language is a technology that must be utilized. You see, diluted. Let me tell you this. Let me tell you what's going on. You ask an interesting question, but it's a bit indiscreet. So I'm not going to read the question. But I'm going to tell you this. That let me tell you what I mean by this. Like, we gotta stop. I think it's childish to think that we are all able to see ourselves properly. Do you see? That means when two people, they have different inner realms. That means when someone looks at you, they can't see you like how you look at yourself. So in some sense, there's this veil. There's this veil that others can't see who you are and you can't see who they are. Do you know? Which I'm just calling the inner realms. You know? And this thing about power struggles, when you study politics, when you look at history and the way it has changed, there has always been a social dimension. That means it's as if kings had emotions when they made decisions back in the day. The thing is that every person, again, like Michelangelo, he said, I saw the angel in the stone and I set it free. He saw an angel in a rock and he sculpted the rock into that angel. The way I see it is 8 billion human beings, they are seeing an angel in the stone. They are seeing a version of the earth. And their success is in that realm that they are kind of walking. Let me tell you, we are not our solutions on this planet, because they are internal conflicts. They don't need violent solutions. I feel with communication, all problems literally that belong to the inner realm can be solved. Because people don't realize you can always add a new dimension. That is how science is alive. This is how science is different from religion, because it updates, you know? And when a human being who's never been born, like the DNA, everybody's DNA is different. You know, for example, on your speaking, and some guy comes in the chat section and says, "Don't speak." You know, I'm just saying it's like we gotta realize we're in the middle of nowhere. Nobody really knows what's going on, but people know certain things about what's going on. Okay? And I'm not sitting here saying like, yeah, this is it. I'm just saying that when I speak through my inner realms, I'm saying that there is more than just matter here. And that is a coin flip situation. Do you know? And for me, it's like I feel it's like too much really rational. What people feel like materialistic rationality. After some point, it leads to an impossibility of explanation of why matter evolved into a mind. Why? Why creature? No one can explain. That is the value of the cosmos. When you read about the Big Bang, there's something very interesting. They call it cosmic inflation. So after the Big Bang, in like, I don't know, less than a second or something, all the stars and various phenomena was set into motion. This pool of energy exploded into these forms, these pre-designed forms, these pre-designed phenomenological forms. You see? And so in a less than a second, right? And so when you look at it from that narrative, in regards to the scientific mind is considering a temperature to the universe, and really at its core, if you really wanted to look at the world, it is in some sense the cooling of the universe, as they say, from the Big Bang. So it's like this cooling process, this crystallization into form. Okay, so nice comments, guys. Yeah, the thing I think about when it comes to living, because nobody really, like, I don't consider I have a clone or something. I'm not like, we're not that sci-fi yet as a civilization. You know, so I feel my eyes are the way I see it, and how can someone else see it? If somebody else saw exactly what I saw, they would be me. That's the fascinating thing about life. We're not all meant to agree. We're meant to, though, participate efficiently in the system. And all that I'm saying, all these talks that I've been giving, their direction is simply this: that while we're here, we build an advanced civilization. And an advanced civilization, if you think about what's going to happen in the future, everything we're afraid of that's happening now is nothing. The future is going to laugh, you know? Laugh at like us thinking that we can say anything wrong in a world where there was pure silence, and then there was this subjective orientation, the symbol attribution, going on. There's this story of this mighty let's say mountain-like kingdom, and like this mountain, let's say, and there's a king and there's the prince. And so the prince is by the gate, and this beggar comes and says, "Prince, give me something, give me da 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 da." You know, the prince looks at this beggar and says, "You even Why should I give it to you? You don't even know its value. You don't even know what it is. Why do you deserve it?" You know, and the beggar goes away. Then, right after, strangely, this mystic comes. And the mystic comes, and right before he speaks, the king looks at him and he's like, "You want me to tell you?" Like as if he's about to repeat. And the mystic says, "I don't want anything from you." And the prince is like, then why are you here?" And then the yogi looks at the prince and says, "I'm here to save you." And then the prince laughs. "Save me? I am in the grandest kingdom of them all. You're here to save me? I'm a prince. I am a future king. You're here to save me?" And then the yogi, the mystic, turns back and says, "I am here to save you from yourself. And when human beings are ushered into a life sensitivity where they can discriminate between what is the magnificent presence of their awareness, their mind on display, the mind actually being the screen where sensory phenomena is gravitated towards, you know. And guys, I'm just speaking through the lens of someone who has studied film, and on some level, the fascination of what is going on in this earth. Einstein was like, if it's something complex, it should be reduced to the simplest way. Sorry, it wasn't Einstein, it was something else. I think it was Occam's razor. Let me double check this. You see, it's yeah, I think it's correct what I was saying. It's a simplification, reducing something. Here, it says to apply Occam's razor. Determine how many assumptions and conditions are necessary for each explanation to be correct. If an explanation requires extra assumptions or conditions, demand evidence commensurate with the strength of each claim. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Okay, that's adorable. But let me tell you what it is. It's like, if we want to give freedom, we can't have an opinion on the act. That means it's like telling a dancer you can't dance, you can't move your right feet in the dance when you dance. And the dancer's like, why? And he's like, that's just the way it is. So I'm saying, like, there is art. So I would say my voices see this as a more artistic project, these Mr. Within talks, you know? Here's the thing. When faced with two opposing explanations for the same set of evidence, our minds will naturally prefer the explanation that makes the fewest assumptions. Why? Because it's more closer to an image. So Occam's razor is a way of saying that we are trying to focus more on the experiential image rather than the linguistic movement of it. But then when you look at poetry, poetry needs space to move, all sorts of space. That means when somebody draws on a canvas, they don't just use one color, they don't just use one brush stroke, and so there's a allowance from the blank canvas for the painting to be drawn. Right. So when I speak, I feel more like someone who's painting with words. I'm just saying that every person is like a flashlight in this dark forest, and how far we go, if we care to share it, we share it with the civilization. I feel that too many philosophers have talked about this. That means don't let any secular person scare you about wondering about the proposition of the unknown in this world. You know? we are alive for 100 years at best, let's say. What does that mean? That means we endure in a system for a certain amount of time. That means we accumulate that many events, that many experiences. Imagine turning on the news, endlessly seeing advancement of your civilization. Imagine seeing human beings go to work, not with a sense of distaste before they begin their act, but with a sense of honor, like, holy shit, are we all building an advanced civilization right now? When civilization gets to that state of mind, we have succeeded. And there are many strategies to bypass extinction. The idea is the more minds there are on the planet, the more unique angles we have to articulate as a global community. I feel individual life, especially in the arena of communication, is going to go towards a global analysis. What does that mean? That means we want to ask global questions and we want to study the specific answers. That means all human beings, there's no longer a measurement of intelligence. Every human being is harboring a unique interpretation of reality in accordance to their experience of their objective realms, subjective realms, and whatnot. We have kept the mind hidden in the dark for too long. When will we realize there's no dark side to the moon when the moon rotates? So anyways, guys, I'm gonna open it up to Q&A for 5 minutes. If anybody has a question, feel free to share. If anybody still wants me to talk about something specific, we can share that too. But I'm gonna open it up to Q&A for 5 minutes. So, yeah, guys, let's open up the Q&A. Guys, I wanted to tell you something, give you a preview about what I'm planning on doing. It's been a couple of years where I've been speaking about philosophy, trying to somehow see if philosophy is still breathing in civilization. And I can say that the value of philosophy is in the depth of the question, the questions that inspire our life. There are many people who their whole life is dedicated to trying to find the answer to some problem. Anyways, I've decided, there's this channel I've created called Mr.Within's Art. So I want to say anybody who follows this channel, you can subscribe to that. I've decided that, I glimpsed upon my mortality and realized now is the only time, now is the only stage where you can actually live. There's like, if you know, there's no, the future is like the afterlife could be anything. You know? It's like, you could throw endless coin flips in there. But I'm saying that it's like the stage is now, and you as a human being realizing that now is the stage of who you are, where you can be who you are, you can see who you are, even wonder about what is this mind that you have. Fear not these questions, because in thousands of years from now, we are still pioneers. They're going to be so much more advanced than this. So when the future is advanced, you have nothing to fear. Attempt it. The poet Rumi has this quote where he says, "Why prefer to crawl through life when we were born with wings?" This idea is being born with wings is the conscious dimension and sophistication we have access to that other species on this planet don't. And if one reduces one to just the simplest, they miss out on the potential of the complex. After some point, like the easiest way to explain the world is it's all nature, folks. Relax. Everybody relax. It's just nature happening. That's the simplest way to kind of see life. What if we care to see additional dimensions? And we will, because it's like, what else is there to do on this rock in the middle of nowhere? It's as if everybody is trying to find their own paradise, not realizing we gotta build it collectively, and then it's going to advance endlessly. That's it. What other path do we have? People have forgotten that our species was engaged by stories. There's no, on some level, how we are creatures that use language. It's because that was the activity before technology. It's like stories or the films you would watch when you would hear your friend come and tell you a story, or you would travel far and see a new place. The more technology has taken our attention, the more information focused we have become. The less we have actually cared about what is moving in this world. This may sound like a strange idea, but I feel no one can really hide their inner realms when they move. When you as a creature, anything you do, from the moment you see someone, you can know. Because I'm telling you, there is a sort of very high-speed subconscious alertness to the movement of form. Do you know that means I feel everybody in subconsciously is processing the world at speeds unfathomable. You know, there's different speeds to the inner realms. I speak about this. No, let me tell you how these talks probably are coming across to people of Gold of One in the chat section. You say it sounds like you're in a wind tunnel. Let me tell you what it is. It's me wondering about a form, an internal object, let's say, as the philosopher Hegel would say, and me wondering about this internal object and noticing that it's as if life, regardless of all the ways it can be classified and interpreted, is being an event. It's being a process. So I suddenly, when I noticed that the unknown is here, I relaxed. I stopped seeking language. That was one thing that changed. And when I stopped seeking language, what was left? The simple presence of my eyes, and I learned to be content with that for a while. It was like, I would say it poetically, the phase of my life where I started noticing the winds of evolution. I started waking up from my desires that were keeping me locally focused on my inner realm. That means I notice everybody is like putting on a mask and living a life in front of everybody else, and everybody's thinking, okay, that's it. You know, not realizing that we are such complex creatures when we have access to memory, when we have access to visualization, when we can always re-communicate. You know, you don't know how many issues that, when I understood this, a lot of my problems in my life, anytime a problem would arise, I would ask, why is it coming from? And then I would ask again to see, what is the structure? What is the design? If this problem suddenly that has appeared in my life, what is the design of that problem? Like, how is it happening? Do you know? And I would come to see the source of that problem was either emotions or it was very rational and I wasn't seeing something. You know? And so we're just creatures. We're just like attempts at nature's artwork. You know? That means when I give these talks, even though I know that many may listen, but I'm like, what can I do? I'm left to being me. You know, my eyes have their own dance, which I can't avoid being in those shoes. The shoes I was born in, you know. So human character is very sophisticated, and when we care about communication and advancing it, what does that mean? That means if you're a world leader of anything, you know, if you're a leader, some sort of big guy in somewhere in the world, maybe you're a billionaire listening to my talk, here's the idea. Imagine you had a jetpack and we were all looking at from an aerial view of the planet, and we imagined we were looking at it in like years from now, and right now it's this gray rectangular kind of cities. It's going to be imagined ridiculously geometrical shapes. Every city is going to become artwork when our technology becomes that sophisticated. Okay, that's mastery. Mastery becomes art. It becomes a simple activity, becomes art. You know, because the unknown is no longer feared. That's why when you practice something for a while, you suddenly notice there's a strange like familiarity you have. You know, so I would say when I start giving these talks, every idea for me has a design. When I look at the design of the idea is not here on its own. This concept of the individual is strange because the way you feel you are you is because you're separating yourself from the world. The way we're all like the secular ones, like, buddy, what are you saying? You're telling us we're all nature right now. And Mr.Within's like, yeah, man, but like these people are going to most likely be like, how are we nature? You know, look at this, look at what man's done. You know, it's like, why? It's like nature doesn't build skyscrapers. You know. And I'm telling you, it's this constant relationship. It's going to become the most sensitive concept that philosophers, uh, let's call them the, let's call it. I'm going to call it. Let's call it the Moderna philosophical renaissance or revolution. Philosophica Moderna revolution. What does that mean? That means the next great question is, how much is it worth it for us to be natural biological beings in a civilization that is incredibly becoming technological? Do you know? So right now, the only way to go is communication. If you're a human being alive on this earth, if we were all at jetpacks looking from the sky, the only thing aside from the physical infrastructure is the communication. That's it. That's the only thing that, if there were advanced extraterrestrial civilizations looking at us, they'd be like, okay, these guys are communicating differently, what's going on? Like, that would spark a fire. But aside from that, we are just kind of programs of animal living. And that is not enough. That is not enough when the man wears a suit and a tie and stares in the mirror. What is that, this man with a suit and a tie, living for if we are all animals? Just purely. Do you see what I'm saying? That means on some level you can't deny the existential nature of a changing world. Okay? That means anybody who has an opinion in this current moment of time, whatever you say, because the world is changing, certainty, whatever said in any moment in this space-time continuum, it's a snapshot. Don't think this film is a snapshot. You're a fool if you do. That's the main thing I'm trying to do. People are like, Mr. Within, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm trying to throw as many mirrors as I can and ask civilization, wonder about your eyes one more time. And ask, what is it that do we really deserve? And does a religious story satisfy this hunger of an advanced civilization? Does a scientific model satisfy the hunger of this advanced civilization? Does just an artistic sort of endless update satisfy this? For me, it is the quality of the life of the human being. That means if we became an advanced civilization, it wouldn't be just, alright, let's become interstellar forever. You know, it would be that first we see everyone is a tourist in manifestation, existentially. So that how do we raise the quality of that people who have come to this land of wonder, with this universe, this wonderland, to get on a ride? It's the quality of the user, of how the attention is being the moment. Because as much as I speak about the value of philosophy, when there are hungry children in the world, how dare we? I feel that shame. But I can say that I don't know if the source or the greatest catalyst, I don't know if people will care for what is in front of their eyes. But if they do, that means a new initiative must arise, a new ethos must, the castle in the sky must be built. Civilization 2.0 has to be dared to want to be wondered about, you know? And that's the thing. When we really realize there is nothing else left other than to build an advanced civilization, just to see what it would be like. Call it a selfish desire, call it a selfless desire. We want to see how far the eyes of man can go. For the Homo sapien has endured, and that is the miracle. That we are still here, that there is a facility, you have free will. So I would say, for me, if you look at knowledge, there's this quote ascribed to Da Vinci. He says, to develop a complete mind, study the science of art, study the art of science, learn to see, realize how everything is connected to everything else. So, of gold of one, I'll tell you this. If everything is connected to everything else, how can we speak about individual things? How can we get even judged about an individual event? If life is seen as a process, which Alfred Whitehead saw, Alfred Whitehead, as secular as he was, he also saw that it was this giant process in motion. So how are we judging little fragments of this macro activity? You know, it's like the person does something wrong, and they're like, "Why did you do it?" And it's like the gravitational pull of the sun did it, not me. You know, it's like that person. How could we know they're wrong? How could we know? Maybe it was a solar flare. Maybe it was the background radiation. You know, as someone was suggesting in the chat earlier. It's not about just see the scientist. There's a dilemma. There's an obstacle, a great challenge that scientists need to uh, handle. And what is this challenge? That if we conduct the most incredible, rational, and precise experiment with no flaw, and we get that experiment finding, the experiment was 100% successful, we are still bringing that information, that scientific accuracy, to a civilization where human beings are not just rational robots, or irrational animals. Do you see? We're not just that, it's that we are living through the theatrics of what we have endured so far. So I would say that when I'm speaking, I am sharing how far my eyes have looked into things. What else can I do? So I hope that gave a proper context to you, to your comment of Gold of One. Guys, the Q&A, it's still open if anybody has an actual question about metaphysics or philosophy or the nature of these ideas I'm talking about. Anyways, guys, seems like nobody has questions, which means everybody knows. So, guys, this is technically the Q&A portion. If anybody has a question, feel free to share. If not, one rests through the void. So A. Barnes says, "Who are you?" You can read the description section of the channel. That's the best thing I can say. But A. Barnes, if you have a question about pretty much in this episode, I'm talking about how human beings have attempted to perceive the mind and what, in my view, we can do. So So guys, in the chat section, nice, a good comment has come. Of Gold of One says the prevention of separation of self is a distortion to the complete understanding that binds all thought. This distortion is chosen by each of us. This distortion is not chosen. You're conditioned into your individualism by where you live. Unless you're Tarzan, and then it would be a totally different argument. But if you're not Tarzan, you have been conditioned. So don't think that you suddenly woke up. You were raised into a position where you could wake up to yourself. So I would say no. I think this is the view. We look at the objective realm and we wonder about it. And let's say we learned everything about the objective realm. The only thing left to study is the subjective realms. And the mind of man, it has been an honorable thing. Nowadays, there are certain people who dishonor philosophy, not realizing it was the noblest of crafts. I remember listening to Dave Chappelle saying stand-up comedy is like an incredible art form. Is a noble art form. And in stand-up comedy, what the speaker is doing is they're talking about an experience, and they're talking about a way they perceived, and they are comparing one world to another, or repeating it and building up to suddenly the final comparison. So what does that mean? That means it is noble to utilize your mind to wonder how far the species can go. What greater honor is there? Live for life, and that's really living for life. That's when you live for life truly. When before Hafez, this poet, has this quote. He says, "One regret, dear life, I wish not to have on my deathbed, is that I did not kiss you enough." What does that mean? That means I was alive, yet did I just exist, or did I live? Did I realize the evolutionary opportunity? Did I realize this 4 billion-year-old science project in front of our eyes? So we have to wonder. You don't realize that whether you like it or not, just like how the seasons change and leaves on the tree change, after 10 years, your biological body, the cells of your biological body are different, and your psychological experience is different because of all the things you've experienced during that time. So we are not a photo on a wall where we can just judge. That means not only you can not judge others, you can't even judge yourself because you're changing phenomenon, you're changing the world. So it's about our consideration as human beings that we decided to consider ourselves faster than the environment. And that's the thing. When the self moves, so pretty much all models of human thought come down to a self being in a world. Okay? So this self being in a world, the relationship is, if the self moves faster than the world, you feel you have free will. If the world moves faster than the self, how could you feel your free will? You will feel nature, that is the mind that's moving you. So we are human beings it's literally this ability of perception, as it goes, and we must utilize. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings, and namaste. And as Aristotle says, again, I will repeat, it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. That means the mind has an ability to make an enemy out of the void. But when we realize every human being, there's a battle they are fighting behind their eyes, when you understand this, that every human being has dimensions of their life that are in turbulence, then you will suddenly see the value of the unknown and the honor that can come from acknowledging that in yourself and others. Let us honorably march towards an advanced civilization. For the great work on this planet, it's really to see as knowing it to be done. The great performance of the eons is now. Much blessings and namaste.